Hey everyone, and welcome to Rambling Reviews, where we analyze different types of media and or their cultural relevance. My name's Christian, and this is Promising Young Woman. This movie stars Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham, and Alison Brie, and was directed and written by Emerald Fennell. Now, I don't really know much about Emerald Fennell outside of her work from this film, but if it's anything like this, it must be incredible. This movie, I really can't think of how to describe it other than saying that everybody needs to see it, and it is the best way I can think to understand and kind of explain the concept of things like the Me Too movement and you know fears of false allegations that many men have and things of that nature, as well as the um, realness of so much. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this without YouTube getting mad at me. I think we're past the point that I can say, but so much like harassment and mistreatment that women face, where it's just kind of blown off by society at large and big institutions, especially like colleges and stuff like that. We're going to be delving into a lot of that stuff here, so I will let you know this is a bit of a this is a I wouldn't call it horror, and I don't know if I'd even call it a thriller. You could call it a thriller, I suppose, but it's a very eye-opening film, I feel like, and it's one that I remember when I was watching it with a buddy of mine. We were literally on the edge of our seat at one point, and I'll be sure to point out where that comes. But no, this is just an incredible movie that I highly recommend everybody see. So um, if you don't want to, I mean, I'll have a spoiler warning like later when we get to that point. But if you want to go into this completely blind, I would recommend doing that before watching this. If you do want to see the actual, an actual like breakdown analysis as I'm going to do here, then stick around and let's get into it. We open with a bunch of businessmen, dressed in suits and things of that nature, seemingly probably off of work or maybe on a business trip, whatever it may be, dancing in a club, looking very schlubby and things of that nature, as we have Boys by Charlie XCX playing in the background. Now, one thing that I want to point out right at the, um, excuse me, one thing I want to point out right off the bat here is that this film takes a strong look at things like you know um, objectification, harassment, kind of the male gaze. I think there's some commentary on things like that. And while I've had broader videos discussing the male gaze in general, my ultimate stance on it, and I think that the actual music video is a really good example of how I personally say there's nothing wrong with the male gaze as far as like women being hot in media or in real life and how they dress or whatever. It's just that like we need the same thing for men. Like I very much believe that men need to be encouraged to be like this guy. To be honest with you, to like from a young age, we need to be encouraged to be in shape and have features that appeal to the female gaze and things of that nature. This is something I'm working on myself. Obviously, I'm nowhere near this guy, right? Obviously, but I'm working on getting myself to that level, I suppose, or at least as close as I can get. But it's something that is often critiqued in media. You have the male gaze and things of that nature, where I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just that we need the female gaze as well. We need men to be hot so that, for one, women and people who like men have eye candy as well, but also so that it shows its examples for men growing up, like boys growing up. Oh, hey, this is how you be attractive to women. And if I have one critique about the film, we'll get into it later. There's a lot. Well, no, I'll save my critiques later as we continue on here. I just wanted to point that out, especially because of like what the film's about and everything, and what the actual music video of Charlie XCX's song for that is and everything. So anyway, moving on. So we have these other businessmen that are sit at the bar talking pretty grossly about some of their other like female colleagues and stuff, and how, oh, you can't do anything, you can't even bring clients to a strip club, you can't do this, you can't, all these different things, right? And which, I mean, I think you still can. I don't know. I've never been in the business world like that or anything, so I don't really know, nor do I care to. But I mean, I think you could still, like, if you want to take clients and you want to meet at a strip club for some reason. Which, on a side note, by the way, I never really understood the point of a strip club because I don't. What is the point of like going somewhere just to be teased when like you can't do anything? Like I don't. You can't do anything. I don't understand the point. Whatever. That's a whole other. That's a whole other thing. But either way, these guys, look over and we have one of the people even say, "Oh God, look at that! Someone's, being like that. Someone's just begging to take it, or she's, she's begging for someone to take advantage of her." That kind of rhetoric. As we have our first shot of the main character, Cassandra, or as the film's going to, people are going to refer to her often throughout the film, Cassie. Now, many other reviewers and things of that nature have pointed out as well, and it isn't lost on me that the way that she's kind of splayed out like this is very similar to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And there is something to be said, I believe, to the idea that she is kind of this sacrificial character as she's being here, and that we'll see that kind of come to fruition later throughout the film. But even at this point, she is putting herself on display in a way, but not in the way that you might think, as we'll get into this further here. As we have one of the sleazy businessmen approach her and basically check to make sure she's okay, everything, make sure she has, her phone and everything on her, and, ask her if, do you need a ride home? Do you let me, take you and get you home? And you're led to believe from this moment, right, that, okay, he's gonna be basically a good Samaritan here and take this woman who's, clearly had too much to drink, take her home and have her, rest for the night because that's what she needs, right? Sometimes you're in a situation where, you're out either by yourself with your friends. I've never been in this situation personally because I don't drink heavily. I legitimately drink to enjoy the flavor. I don't drink to like get hammered or anything like that. But and I don't really drink anymore since I started my fitness journey anyway. But either way, you know, you you know, sometimes someone is that drunk and they just need someone else to, help them get home. They're stumbling out of the bar, that kind of thing, right? And it seemed like it's going to be a really, kind of, sweet moment here. But as he's taking her home, he mentions, oh, my house is actually just a couple blocks from here. Why don't I take you back to my place and you can get another drink before we, before I take you home, right before you hit the hay. And first of all, she is obviously way too drunk already. She doesn't need any more drinks. Secondly, it's very obvious where this is going. And I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with like inviting someone that you're on a date with or what have you back for a nightcap or something, and anything like that, or just inviting someone back to your place to hook up or anything. Nothing wrong with any of that. The issue here is that this is a woman who is hammered out of her mind and needs to go home. She's not in the right the right space of mind to consent, which is a big thing we're gonna get into here. She doesn't need any more drinks. She needs to go home, go to sleep, probably deal with the hangover the next day, but she doesn't need any of this. And we have this moment where, as the man prepares her a drink, you see that she's just very uncomfortable here as he's preparing the drink. And he's not forcing her to, but I mean, he is, he's just giving her the drink and having her drink. And from this point on, he starts, kind of kissing on her and different things. And I say on her because like he's kissing her lips, but in a very uncomfortable moment. I was actually debating on showing this, but it's the movie. In a very uncomfortable moment, we actually have like, you can see he's kissing her, but like her lips are pursed. She's not like actually kissing back, so like we have just all these moments as we continue that consent is not being established. Consent is not being established in any way, shape, or form, not verbally, not physically, we're not having anything. And we have this moment here where he gets her back to bed. She literally flops back on the bed, and in a very uncomfortable moment, as he begins undressing her, she's splayed out like a starfish and just keeps saying, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Just kind of very in a drunken haze. And then she sits straight up and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And this is the part where we realize what this movie really is about and what is happening more specifically with her. Now, we have this moment. Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit the marketing of this movie, because something that was very off-putting. I honestly don't feel like it was marketed the best, because it was kind of marketed as like a revenge thriller, and kind of when I first heard about it and someone told me about it, it sounded like a very like kind of man hating, like all men bad kind of thing. And as a man, it sounded like something that was like, okay, like I'm kind of interested, like from a story standpoint, but it sounds like it's just gonna like shit on like men in general, and that's not what I think anybody needs right now. Um, and I should clarify as well that I didn't mention it before, but this movie did come out in 2020. I believe during the lockdown, actually, which wasn't, it wasn't. I don't know. I guess like maybe 23, 22, 21, somewhere like early 20s, early 2020s here. I would say was probably the height, and or maybe we're only increasing now, of the kind of like gender wars that we're seeing between men and women right now. And it was something that it definitely felt like not the best thing to have right now, not really the best thing to see, and things of that nature. But the movie is really about. I mean, it is a revenge thing in a way, because what we have here, so we have this little fake out where we have like what looks to be potentially blood dripping from Cassie's arm, but in actuality, she's eating a hot dog. This is kind of a good juxtaposition in showing that, like, you might think this is someone who is, kind of hunting down predators and going to kill them after the fact. In reality, she's really just trying to scare them shitless and basically knock some sense into them, which for one, I think is a very good way to go about handling this. And as we'll continue here, the movie is a lot more, I would say, nuanced in its understanding of the, conflict, we'll say, and the discussion between like, things of, consent and dating and hookup culture and all these different things, and men taking advantage of women and all this different stuff. More nuanced and understanding than you might think it would be if you just like saw the trailers or the marketing or anything like that. But we have this moment here where, as Cassie's walking home, she comes across these construction men who catcall her. Now, okay, this is another thing where like I never understood the point of catcalling. It's like, I get that you find a girl hot, like that's fine. Like, I want to be clear on this just real quick as well. There's nothing wrong with finding people attractive that you find attractive, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. But when you're like a creep about it and you're staring or you're catcalling or anything like that, it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, respect their humanity. Like, you can just see someone that you find attractive and just think, wow, they're hot. That's it. I mean, you can go up to them and start a conversation and try to, flirt with them, hit on them, whatever, if you want to do that too. But like, the thing with catcalling, it's not about, the thing about this too, like, it's where they say, we're far enough in the video that I can say this. Rape is not a crime of sex. It's a crime of power. Or rather, it's not about sex. It's about power. Whereas, like, it's not about finding somebody sexually attractive. It's about wanting to have that power over them. And same thing with catcalling. It's I would say, potentially lighter form of sexual harassment. But we have this great moment where, as they do catcall to her, and I want to point out even just the framing of this, where we see Cassie so small in the frame, and I feel like that's deliberate to show that she's small in this like world of the construction men and all these people, yet she's just standing there, staring them down and standing her ground. And it makes them uncomfortable because they're not expecting her to, like have any reaction as far as like any autonomy in the matter. That's not how this works. You're just supposed to be catcalled, and that's it basically. So we then cut to presumably the next morning as Cassie is filling out her notebook filled with tally marks as well as names of people she's either going after or just names that she's collecting of men that have been predatory in one way or another, either related to the death of her friend, which we'll find out about in a minute here, or just people who have been shitty men trying to take advantage of women, like Jerry from last night. And I just want to say real quick, to anybody that has a name on this or in this book here, myself, I have my name here as well. Nothing against any men that have a name in the book. So I'm sure any of you watching this who might agree with this kind of thing would are perfectly fine people yourself. But people with your name can be shitty. Simple as that. And here we see Cassie's home life as we were introduced to her parents, Susan, played by Jennifer Coolidge, as well as Stanley, played by Clancy Brown. Now, you'll have to forgive me here because I'm not familiar with Jennifer Coolidge. I've definitely heard the name before, and I think she was in like a lot of like 90s movies or something. But Clancy Brown, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with because he's done just a ton of voice acting. His most famous one is probably Mr. Krabs, from the SpongeBob franchise. But he also did he did Lex Luthor in the DCAU. He did he did Cortex in the original Crash Bandicoot games. Clancy Brown he did one of the characters in Detroit Become Human, which actually looked like him as well. He did a ton of characters. He's done a lot of work, a lot of voice work specifically, and we're gonna see a fair amount of familiar faces throughout this movie as we continue on as well. But we have the parents understandably questioning her and asking, well, why didn't you came home? We didn't hear you come in last night. Like, where were you? And she's, oh, I had to work late. We had to do inventory and things of that nature. Of course, she's not going to let them in on her double life or anything like that because why would you? But here we are also introduced to where Cassie works, the coffee shop, as well as the fact that she works with her best friend, Gail, played by Laverne Cox. Now, I will say, if there's anything to potentially critique this film for in regards to um, regressive mentalities, you could say that the main character being a white blonde woman and having the black best friend kind of trope is potentially problematic. But I don't really think. First of all, they don't mean like it's not done in like a gross way or anything like that. And Gail is very much like her own character from everything that we see of this. I mean, she's not the main character, so you don't delve into like things about her specifically. But I just want to point that out because I know that's a common trope in a lot of media and something that it's definitely problematic in certain instances. But either way, we have Cassie being just incredibly and unnecessarily rude to a customer who just wants a cup of coffee. And after this, and we're seeing kind of the dynamic and the vibe of Cassie in general here. She's very kind of she's very closed off. I think that's a really good way to put it. She's very closed off. She has clearly been hurt, and I mentioned her friend who she's kind of basically getting revenge on behalf of, and we'll get to that more later. But she's just very closed off in general. She's clearly been hurt, and here we have the introduction of Ryan, played by Bo Burnham. Now, on a side note, I want to point out that Bo Burnham is one of, if not probably at this point, my favorite comedian. Just in general, I love his wordplay. I love his messaging. I get a lot of his comedic songs stuck in my head all the time. I am definitely right brain. From it. Wait, right brain? Yes, I am the artistic, touchy, feely, very, dreamy, like in their feelings, kind of, as far as the right brain, left brain dynamic goes. If you've seen that, if you haven't seen that, definitely look up a lot. Bo Burnham really kind of blew up, I would say, after the Inside thing that he did. But I mean, his work has been great ever since before then. He did a great kind of, show that was very much ahead of his time called Zack Stone is Going to Be Famous, which aired on MTV. And I very well may go over that at some point in the future as well, because I think it was very ahead of its time and very, like, relevant to today, with social media and things of that nature. But in any case, Ryan clumsily asks Cassie out after first asking her what she's doing there, because it turns out they were basically in medical school together. And it makes sense. Like, you wouldn't expect somebody who went to medical school with you to be working at a coffee shop. And she calls him out on that. She's like, "You mean, what am I doing working at, like, a shitty coffee shop?" He's like, "No, I didn't." "Okay, yeah, that is what I meant. And he tells, he's like, "You can spit in my coffee," because she asks, "Well, do you want milk with it?" And he's like, "No, but you can spit on it because I deserve that." And she does, and he drinks it, and this kind of, like, impresses her. So when he asks her out, she's like, "You know what? Sure, yeah, let's go out." Um, and I do just want to point out real quick that for a lot of people, I think, a woman they find attractive, maybe even a guy they find attractive, I don't know, but someone they find attractive, spitting in their drink or on their food or whatever, could be kind of kinky, and they could be into it. So there's also that, possibility. We have the whole, like, "oh, step on me, mommy" kind of thing, right? So I mean, I'm sure for a lot of people they'd be like, "Oh my god, yeah, she spit in my now I want it even more." But for this, it was more of a power play, and he's like, "I'm accepting that you've done this, and I am, I'm accepting this because I deserve this," essentially, which speaks very well to her. And this is the first instance we're seeing of her thinking, like, maybe there's hope for this guy. However, she's still very guarded and on a mission. As we see Cassie getting ready for yet another, well, I wouldn't call it a date, but another mission, we'll say, as we have her watching a makeup tutorial on how to get the perfect blowjob lips. Basically her whole thing here, as we're going to find out, is, for reasons that we're going to delve into later, she is on a mission to basically take down really shitty men who are, I can only think to describe them as nice guys who seem to be very, like, kind of, "Oh, I'm a nice guy." They're not like brutish and kind of like, alpha men kind of guys, but they are the kind of guys who are, they seem like they're nice, and maybe they're a little bit on the nerdier side or what have you, but what they're doing is they're very much trying to get girls, intoxicated in some way or another so that they can take advantage of them. As we have her at yet another man's place, who even goes so far as to play the whole, like, "Oh, I'm actually a feminist, and I think, all these different things," and he's kind of saying all the right things and everything. But and he asks her, while she's already clearly intoxicated and things, like, "Hey, like, you do coke, right?" And he's constantly trying to, like, interject these seemingly progressive, viewpoints and things like that, with this thing where he's clearly trying to, again, get her intoxicated. But I mean, this guy literally, like, he gets some coke on his finger and basically forces her to kind of not snort it, but, like, he puts it in her mouth in, like, a weird way. And she even tells him, she's like, "Oh, I don't really do coke. I have work tomorrow." She's giving him all these reasons. She's like, "I'm not interested. I don't want to. I don't want this to go further. I don't want anything." And he now he does give her some water, so I guess there's some points for that, right? But and she actually will mention something else we're giving points for, where he tries to make sure that he's awake before fingering her. And at this point, she flips. She's like, "All right, here we are. This is the moment." And he immediately realizes, like, "Oh my god, you're not actually drunk. You're not actually, like, all these different things, right?" And he's like, I don't, I'm a nice guy. I don't." And she's like, "You know what, Neil," the guy's name is Neil, by the way. She says, "You know what, Neil, you're not really as rare as you think you are, because I do this kind of thing every week, where I go to a club and I act like I'm way too drunk, and someone shows up, a nice guy shows up asking to see if I'm okay, and then they take me home. And I'll tell you what, though. You know what? At least you waited to make. At least you made sure that I was awake before trying to finger me. You get a little bit of points for that." And we have this great moment where she has him backed up against the wall, and she just simply asks him, "Still want to fuck me?" To which he says, "No, thank you, ma'am." And we have this moment where we're seeing that, like, what she's doing is she is just trying to get like these people, to attract these people who are just awful human beings that are clearly wanting to um, take advantage of women who are intoxicated, who cannot consent. And the reality is, this kind of thing is not entirely fictional. This kind of thing does unfortunately happen. Um, I don't know if it's as common now because, from what I understand, people in general, like especially Gen Z, aren't going out as much and drinking and stuff. So this kind of thing might be dying down. But this is a darker aspect, I would say, to kind of party and hookup culture for a lot of people, where basically, and again, I want to be clear: nothing wrong with partying, nothing wrong with hooking up, nothing wrong with any of those things. It's just you got to have consent. You got to be able. And on that note, like, and this is one of those things where, and we'll touch on this more later, but I really do wish, and I was hoping the whole time while watching this, that as we are seeing these examples, these horrible examples of men, just being horrible, I was really hoping we would see something to kind of counteract that and see, the right way to go about, escalating and getting consent and all of those steps to kind of like have a good example to contrast with all the negative examples. And we'll see where that goes as we continue on here. But yeah, basically we see at this point here that what she is doing in order to avenge the death of her friend Nina, who basically, as we'll get into later here, took her own life after a horrific incident at college. Cassie has taken it upon herself to avenge her by going after shitty men like this who are trying to take advantage and really just send a message, kind of, scare some sense into them, really, at the end of the day. And you know, again, I really do think that the marketing and kind of how this film was portrayed to people in general was, like, didn't do it justice. This is an incredible film, as we're going to continue getting into here, but I really do think that it didn't do it really didn't do anybody the marketing and stuff. I don't think did the film justice at all, because it's a lot more. The characters are a lot more complex, and the story and everything is a lot more complex and, I would say, nuanced than what it was portrayed as. But after yet another, I guess you could call it conquest, although instead of her, okay, just on a side note, I don't really like calling, like, I don't know, sexual conquests or whatever, but another mission accomplished, we'll say. She marks it in her book, and we have this scene where it's her birthday, and her parents could not be less subtle, as their birthday gift to her is a suitcase with a bow on it, just wrapped up. Not even in a box, not anything, just a suitcase. And she later talks to Gail about this at the shop, where it's like, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty clear message. They're trying to tell her, get out of our house. You're too old to be living here. I mean, she's in her I believe. Okay, it's actually funny that I actually forgot her age. I thought she was like in her like earlier mid 30s. No, she actually turns 30 here, and it's funny that I forgot because Cassie forgets as well. Which the mom sets the mom to kind of break down. She's like, "What kind of person forgets her 30th birthday?" And this causes her to break down, because what Cassie's parents are seeing is that basically she's in a state of arrested development. She's in a state where, and it makes sense, and we'll get to it with, while she basically experienced secondhand trauma that we'll delve into more later here, she is stuck in life. I mean, she's working like a minimum wage job at a coffee shop. She's living with her parents. She doesn't really have any romantic prospects. She doesn't have anything like this. And look, as somebody who, well, I do have my own place. I've been single for years. I do have a full-time job, but I haven't My point is, like, there is nothing wrong with like not being at a stage in life where you feel you're supposed to be. Like, we all have our own journey in life and different things like that. But the point of this is to show that she has been so traumatized by the events we're going to get into later here that she is not progressing in life at all. She's not anywhere where she technically should be. Now, I don't really like the idea that necessarily because you're at like a certain stage in your life, like, oh, you have to get married, you have to have kids, you have to do these different things. You know, whatever you want to do with your life, who you want to spend your life with, like that's up to you. Ultimately, personally, I don't want children myself. I don't know if I want to get married. I do want a long-term partner, but I don't know if I want to get married. Maybe just a long-term girlfriend. I don't know, but whatever you want to do with your life, entirely up to you. The point, though, is that in Cassie's case, she has been in this dead end spot for herself emotionally and in every other aspect that she's suffering. And that's the point here. This isn't used to kind of like, make fun of her or anything like that. This is just to show that her parents, because really what they're trying to do, right? Yes, they are trying to tell her, like, get out of our house, but they're also trying to tell her, we need you to move on with your life. You really need to, because they know that what happened to her friend, they know that, like, it was an issue, but they don't know the extent of how much it hurt her. And I don't know if they even know what actually happened to her. But essentially, we have this moment where the girls, Cassie and Gail, are talking at the shop again about everything, where we have Ryan come back in and properly ask her out on a date, this time, without the weird, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, you can spend my coffee, whatever, right? He does actually come back and try again, and it works. And they go on this date, and as she does, and she's all dressed up in this cute dress, and her parents are like, oh wow, like, you're going on a date, like, I'm so proud, like, we're so happy for you, because again, like, they love her, and they just want to see her move on with her life, and I can only imagine what it must be like as a parent to see your child just stuck in this space where they're just not progressing in life. They're not moving on, and you see that they're suffering essentially. So they're very proud and happy for her and all that. So they go on this date together, and they just have this incredibly great time, lovely conversation and everything here, and everything is going wonderfully until we have this moment where on the walk back home, Ryan says, "Oh, this is actually my place. This is where this is where I live. Would you want to, come up or anything?" And immediately, this is where she, like, immediately kind of shuts down, and he realizes, like, because he knows what he's trying to do, and she knows what he's trying to do. And he's like, okay, clearly that wasn't the right move, and he tries to kind of like double back and everything, but she's like, you know what, it's late. Let's just call it a night. And we have this moment where, like, she's shattered once again. She thought she was going on this date with this guy who really wanted to get to know her and like her and everything, and it seems like he just wanted he just wanted her body, right? And I want to be clear once again with this: on a date, in any capacity, no matter, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, having sex on the first date, for example. There's nothing wrong with finding somebody who you guys have mutual attraction to, and you just want to hook up from like a bar or club or something. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. The issue here is that Ryan did this in a dishonest way. They weren't hanging out, and he said, hey, do you want to go back to my place? Hey, do you want to check out this thing that I have? Hey, do you want to whatever? Something to let her know they were going back to his place and give her that option to say yes or no. Instead, they just happened to be walking back to her place, and he's like, oh, this is my spot. Like, crazy coincidence, right? She's like, okay, I see where this is going, and I don't want to deal with this. I don't think I want to deal with you, basically. And I mean, yeah, it totally makes sense, because, like, what are you doing? Just be honest. Like, if you're dating someone, or whatever it is, and you want to go back to their place, or have them go back to your place, be honest. Just tell them, like, what you're going for. Like, obviously you're not going to, I mean, depending on your relationship at that point and everything, you might, be able to more kind of overtly say, like, you know hey, do you want to go fuck, or something like that. Which, by the way, on a side note, I do wish that we could just like tell people we find attractive, like, immediately, like, hey, I think you're hot, would you want to hook up? But like, or, depending on what you're looking for in the relationship, like, oh, hey, I think you're hot or attractive in whatever way, I'd like to get to know you better, I'm looking for a long-term relationship, short-term relationship, whatever it, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world where we can be that, like, overt about our intentions, but you do still want to be honest about your intentions in general, not too forward, but not dishonest either. There is, it's dating and flirting and all that. It's a game you have to play, and I myself don't know all the rules, so I'm still learning myself, which is why I'm not you know at any level to really like give advice on that to an extent. But I do know things like this, and as far as like what not to do and things of that nature. So take that as you will. But I do want to mention as well, on the actual date before this happened, there was a mention of the fact that they were in med school together, and I asked her, like, why did you drop out? Like, why didn't you finish? Why didn't you finish med school? She's like, I just didn't want to. I just didn't want it enough. And we see that this is a touchy subject because, as we'll find out later, the reason that she dropped out actually was because she didn't, she dropped out at the same time, or around the same time, shortly after that, her friend Nina had taken her life, and we're seeing the puzzle pieces coming together and how it's all connected. And we'll get to this, further as we continue on here. So after everything that happened here, we have a moment where essentially Cassie's reflecting on the situation and basically decides to give Ryan another chance. So she shows up to his work, which it's not really that important, but he's a pediatrician, by the way. And she shows up to his work, and I want to point out here, this is something that is very important to me. When you see the type of I think okay, I'm sorry, I'm like lost for words here trying to explain this. The way that conversations are had in this are very real, because as she's basically trying to, let him know that she's willing to give him another chance, she just wants to take things a lot slower. She's like not really looking at him. Her she's like looking down, her like eyes around and stuff. And I mean, how relatable is that? Where whether you're asking someone for maybe even a second date, or you're like, you got a crush on someone or whatever it is, or just in general, like when we talk to people, we don't always look people like directly in the eye all the time. We look around, we do different things, like all kind of stuff, right? And in this kind of, this kind of moment, like she's nervous, and we see it in her body language and stuff, and all these different things. And I mean, he's nervous too, and he's also towering over her because Bo is a very tall man. So I just want to point that out as well. But no, I mean, I think this is it's cute. It's very like it's very real, and I think one of the things that this film excels at is rawness and just real authenticity. And I think it's great. I think this film really is just, yes, it's very real about like the dark stuff, the dark subject matter, but it's also very real. Like these people, they feel like real people, for lack of a better way to put it. So then we have this scene where Ryan, Cassie, and Gail are all hanging out, and yes, they're hanging out at the coffee shop, but and they'll hang out outside of here as well. But we have this moment where we're seeing that, yeah, Ryan and Cassie are clearly like becoming a thing here. She's introducing him to her friend. They're having that, I don't really know what you call it, but you know what it is when you're dating someone for a while and you start, introducing them to the friend group and things of that nature. I've only ever dated through friend groups, so I've never had to. Well, I've introduced to other friend groups that I've had, so there's been that. But yeah, this is how the kind of thing goes. We do have this moment here where it's clearly a sore subject, or rather awkward, where like Gail's like, oh, can you lock up for me? And by the way, if you guys decide to get freaky in here, make sure to clean up after yourselves. And this is a moment where like neither of them are like kind of joking around or anything, or like being flirty with each other about it, because clearly it's a sore subject. It was kind of like that concept, like in and of itself, it's like, no, like, we're taking things very slowly, so like, um and but again, you have these moments where, like, I can't stress it enough, like, you definitely need to see this movie. Everybody really does just seem like real people. Like, it's I don't know, it's incredible. But from one sore subject to another, we have where Ryan is mentioning basically old friends from college or med school, I should say. By the way, on a side note, and should probably know this because one of my best friends went to med school. Um, I don't know if there's a difference between, like, I don't know if medical school is like a different kind of school than college, or if you do like medical studying, like studying for medical stuff in college, and that's referred to as med school. So I don't know if these are like different things, but um, whatever the case, I know you do a lot of schooling, like 8 years, I think you have to do for med school. So maybe I don't know. Point is, I don't know. My point is, he's mentioning like old friends from school they had together, and we have this moment where the conversation shifts, and like we have the, like, a musical sting and everything, as he mentions Al Monroe, at which point the whole vibe shifts. Cassie starts asking him like, "Oh, do you see Al a lot? Do you know?" He's like, "Oh yeah, well, no, not really, but I mean, like, he's part of our friend group, kind of, but like we don't really hang out much. He's actually getting married, all these different things, and we're seeing that clearly something about Al really, really is getting under Cassie's skin. So Cassie decides to meet with her old friend, Madison McPhee, who also knows both Al as well as the woman he's going to be marrying, which she doesn't have any like connection to anything here. She's just, you know, just the person that Al happens to be marrying now, and the reason that he is coming back to America after having been in England for so long. But the important thing here is this is where everything starts to. This is where like the plot really starts to ramp up, if you will, because we're introduced here to Madison McPhee, played by Alison Brie, as she meets with Cassie in order to basically just catch up, kind of see how things are and everything, and discuss the past. And Cassie, says, "I want to let you know why I actually dropped out." She's like, "You remember what happened, right?" And we have this moment where Madison just very flippantly is talking about how this person who she's not naming, but basically how, oh, well, I don't know, kind of, when you have a habit for sleeping around like she did, I mean, you can't really expect people to not blame you when something happens. And she's just being completely flippant, completely, and again, we don't see yet how, what actually happened to her, but, she's just being completely flippant about the whole thing. And essentially, um, we had this moment where before, and she got down, and she even said that, the man she's married, she's like, "Oh, he thinks I'm a good, Fred is his name." She's like, "Oh, he thinks I'm a good girl," and Cassie's like, "That's fine. I don't remember you being such a good girl, and back in school." And Madison's like, "Well, what he doesn't know won't hurt him." And you juxtapose that with her now being, her being flippant and slut shaming this person who had a traumatic experience because they were taken advantage of for being very drunk. And it's like, okay, both of these people, whether she had a reputation for it, the character they're talking about, by the way, is Nina. I just to say, that's why this affects Cassie so much. Nina, Cassie's best friend, had a horrible experience with this, and I'm being vague as so that I build up this properly, like the movie did. But I do want to just mention that it's Nina, so I don't have to keep saying this person or that person or what have you. But anyway, Nina, basically had a reputation for being a slut, whereas Madison, I guess, didn't have that reputation, but still, by all definitions people commonly use, would say that she is. And on a side note with this as well, I just want to say real quick, there's nothing wrong with like being a slut, as it were. I think slut shaming is extremely like cringe and lame and stupid and like extremely counterproductive. I very much advocate for what I refer to as slut praising. We should encourage people, men, women, people of all genders and sexualities, to be sluts, as it were, as in just be sexually free and have relationship with whoever they want as long as they're other consenting adults. But I think the concept of like shaming someone for like sleeping around or whatever, like that's ridiculous. I think it's really dumb how you have the double standard where like a man that can do it is seen as a hero and a woman that does it is like awful. It's like you can't have one without the other. Like what are we doing here? I don't know. I think people should just be encouraged to just enjoy life however they want, and if that includes being sexually free and promiscuous, let them. Just let them, and like there's nothing wrong with it. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that real quick. But you have this juxtaposition of Madison also being this way, but not having much of a reputation for it, whereas Nina did, and basically how she doesn't really have any remorse. She's like, it's just how it is. I don't make the rules. And Cassie's like, I really hope you'd feel differently at this point. She's like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll get the check. I'll whatever, like all these different things. And we have her basically Cassie slipped something in her drink. And because of this, we have this moment where she goes to this guy, and it seems pretty bad. As Cassie says, well, for your sake, I really hope you'd see things differently by now. But as she leaves, she talks to this guy, and she's like, all right, take her to her room, take her to the room, you know what to do. And we have things being kept pretty vague here. We don't know what this guy's going to do. We just have that he's this kind of, and he's a pretty good looking guy, but he's this kind of businessman looking kind of guy, or at least he's dressed really nice and all that, and definitely seems like the kind of person who, in this instance, is gonna be taking advantage of her. So we are seeing this moment where Cassie is stooping so low as to have a character, have another character actually be taken advantage of, actually be assaulted in this way to teach her a lesson, which is absolutely horrific, but that is what we're seeing here. So from this point forward, starting with Madison earlier, we're now having not just random guys, but specifically people that were in some way either directly or indirectly involved or responsible for Nina's eventual suicide. Or rather, to be more specific, the event that occurred triggering her suicide. And I'm being vague about this again because the movie's vague about this, and I want to take you on the journey properly here. But we now have Cassie picking up a girl, and I love that they make sure to include on the shot and really let you know this is a high school. She is picking up a high school girl who's clearly, I don't remember if the actress at the time was actually a minor, but clearly the character she's playing here is a minor. And we have this moment where essentially Cassie has, as she tells the girl that, she's basically lost and she's on her way trying to get to some diner where she's supposed to be shooting this music video. And the girl just happens to, see that it's for this band called Wet Dreams, which is a big, like a band that she is a huge fan of. Now, on this note, this is clearly as well some commentary on like, fandom culture to an extent, and especially, young girls being obsessed with fans being obsessed with, bands and different, artists and stuff like that, celebrities in general, and them being able to take advantage of them and things of that nature. And yeah, that's also a really gross thing that happens a lot too. But she got you can almost see like the stars in her eyes. She's like, oh my god, I love Wet Dreams. Like I can take you there. And Cassie plays it off. She's like, oh no, like you can't post about it. I won't post about anything. I'll keep it quiet. I really want to go and meet them, all these different things. She doesn't say she wants to meet them, but she's like, I can direct you. Like how are you gonna find all these different things, right? And she's like, all right, fine, get in. Like all these different stuff. She's like, and she's saying, oh my god, I'm gonna meet my favorite band. And yeah, and there's also this little moment here where she says, I have a page on Instagram completely dedicated to, I don't know, one of the band members' dogs. And Cassie's like, oh, well, isn't that a coincidence? Which I think also is a real good indication of the fact that, guys, people can find you, or at least, they can find you like based on your name and stuff, if you post that stuff online. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a fan page for something, maybe don't let it link back to who you actually are, but just have it be a fan page. A lot of people will do that though, where they'll have like on Instagram or I think on Twitter as well, or Reddit. That's what I was thinking of, or all these different things where they'll have like, oh, here's this fan page ran by this account, and then you'll click that account, and that account will bring you to the person, and they'll like give their information and stuff. And it's like, don't do that. Like, I've talked about this before, but I myself, I'm very careful about the fact that yes, I do use my real name for my channel here, but I'm very careful to not like disclose any location type of information or anything like that. And anything you can't find publicly, you're not really going to be able to find. I try to be careful about that stuff and just be safe online. I think this is good commentary for that kind of thing as well. But I do want to point out something interesting here too, because we are seeing at this point, like I said, with she's Cassie is clearly going after specifically people who have been in some way or another responsible or involved with the event that caused Nina to take her life. We have this moment as well where we are seeing the tallies, the same tallies that she's been writing in her notebook. We're seeing these tallies as well, because now she is specifically going after the people, like I said, who were involved here. And I just think it's a cool little editing thing and stuff like that, to have these little tallies indicating each person she's taking down in some way or another in this regard. And we now have Cassie meeting with the dean of the school that she went to, Elizabeth Walker. And so of course she starts to ask her, the dean that is, oh, well, what are you doing here? What brings you here? All those different things, right? Why now all of a sudden? What? And of course Cassie explains, well, I actually left because of what happened to Nina. To which of course, the dean looks perplexed. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and he has to, oh, Nina Fisher. Oh, you don't remember her? Okay, well, maybe you remember Alexander Monroe. And Elizabeth, we'll just call her Walker moving forward. She's like, oh yeah, he actually just gave a talk here. He's a really nice guy. Is he a friend of yours? And Cat's like, no, he's not a friend. She explains how he took Nina back to his room, and in front of all of his friends, had sex with her while she was too drunk to consent or do anything. She had bruises and stuff all over her, and all this, and it was brought to Walker's attention. But as Walker explains, she's like, well, these cases come up all the time. It's always a very he said, she said kind of thing. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Put everyone who has these accusations, potentially ruin every young man's future who has these accusations against them. Which, first of all, the fact that it's happening this common, like this often, is like, that should be a huge red flag. You know what I mean? Like, that should be just a huge thing. And yet, she just brushes it off, and many people do for these kind of things, right? And I want to be clear about this. It is true that yes, false allegations absolutely can happen. It is true that yes, women and men and people of all sorts, but like especially in this case, women can absolutely use either actually making them or the fear of making them as a way to kind of like hold that over, especially a man, because yes, we do live in a society that typically, socially will side with women in that regard, but legally in these ways, even if it's a situation like this where, I mean, you gotta look into it further. Like, she had bruises all over her, she had all these different things, and it's like, you can't just say like, oh, well, this is just a he said she said thing and we're just going to throw it out. These things need actual investigation. Now, it is unfortunate, but it is true, of course, that if you're accused of something you didn't do, the burden of proof lies on that one, and that isn't fair. But like, if in this case, like, she had bruises and everything all over her, I mean, you gotta look into that further. You gotta do something. But they just let it go, and and she's like, well, how is your friend Nina? And you know, and she's like, is she well? And Cass is like, no, she's not. But Al's actually doing great, and I'm sure you'll be okay with this. But a few hours ago, I picked up your daughter Amber from high school, and I actually brought her to the room that Nina was in when all this happened. Al's old room. To which this just sets Walker off. We have Cassie explaining how she brought her when she brought her there, brought her to the room. Oh, these guys. She's very, very pretty for Raven. She looks a lot older than she actually is. And I'm pretty sure I saw some vodka and stuff there. She was really excited to meet them, though. So, she's probably going to have a great time. To which, understandably, this just sets off the mother, and she's like, "Where is my daughter?" To which Cassie's like, "I just told you. She was at the room that Nina was in when all of this happened." And she's like, "And I told you I don't remember." And she's like, well, that's a shame. And we just have this like incredible power play where we have Walker begging and pleading to know where her daughter is. At which point she finally breaks down and says, "You're right. I should have taken this more seriously." She doesn't say I should have taken this more seriously, but she admits to the fact that she was wrong in the case of Nina and Al, and that she shouldn't have let him get away with it. At which point, Cassie just says, "Now, was that so hard?" She starts laughing, and she's like, "Relax. I'm not a monster. I didn't, you know, put your daughter up to be, raped by a bunch of guys or anything like that." She's at a diner waiting for her favorite boy band, but you better reach out to her. Actually, has this moment too where Walker tries to call her daughter. Her daughter's name is Amber, by the way. She tries to call Amber, but Cassie has her phone. She's like, yeah, oh, yeah, she left her phone with me. She's not really that smart. Here, you might want to call the diner, make sure she's still there. Otherwise, they'll never find out. She'll never find out that they're going to show up because, she's really not that smart. She's so pretty though. But hey, what good have brains ever done a woman, right? And we just have this like incredible, just power play of everything that Cassie is doing here. And I want to be clear, like, she's not a hero. She's not a good person for doing this stuff. She's very much like a anti-hero, vigilante kind of person. And we see that, quite honestly, she doesn't only, for the most part, she's really just trying to instill fear into people that have done horrible things. And she is not not like going after innocent people in any capacity. Although, as we have this moment where, after falling asleep at the wheel, because remember, Cassie is not like in a good mental state at all. She has her reasons, understandable as they are, for doing what she is, and she is in some ways in the right, but she's not, like I said, she's not really a hero or anything like that. Um, we have this guy, we have this whole scene where this guy comes up to her, and he's basically just being like a dickish, road ragey kind of driver guy, which, once again, on a side note, do not ever stop to like yell at people who like on the road. Or personally, I don't even like really honking at people. Every now and then I will, but like especially people that like flip others off and stuff, because you never know if the person's got like a weapon or something in their car. And this guy's about to find out that the hard way here, as she takes I really don't know what the tool is. It's some, I don't know, some kind of tool. Oh, you know what I think it is? I've only changed my tire a couple times in my life, but I think it's the tool you're supposed to use to like to change your tire, or the jack. I think it is. Yeah, I think it's a jack. The like the like the handle of the jack, when you like insert it into the part you push on. I'm explaining this so terribly. But she takes that, and she starts just destroying the guy's car to the point where she smashes his brake lights as well as his windshield. And I mean, let's be clear here. The dude was an absolute asshole. He called her the well he called her first he called her like a stupid cunt, which was what made her do this, and then he called her a crazy bitch. At which point she's just like, "Excuse me," and he's like, "You're you're a crazy bitch." He's like, "Fuck this, I'm out of here." And let's be clear, this is wrong. Like even if someone pisses you off or they call you some like horrible names or whatever, like you don't just smash someone's car or something up like this. Especially because I mean, in this kind of instance, dude could have had a gun or something on him. Like this was a risk of her own safety. But either way, yeah. We then have Ryan meet up with Cassie, where he basically just confronts her like, "Listen, I haven't heard from you lately. I tried reaching out. Still want to see you, want to make sure you're okay. All these different things." He's, "Oh, I've been working." It's like, yeah, that's the thing. I stopped by the coffee shop and I talked to Gail. She said, she hadn't really seen you either. You took the day off. All these different things. Cassie isn't being honest at all, of course, about anything that she's doing. She says, "No, I'm," and Ryan asks her as well. He's, on another date. He's like, "We can still see a movie tonight, or whatever." And I do want to just be clear real quick. Of course, there are more things you can do for dating other than just seeing movies, but that is a common one people do. So makes sense, whatever. Yeah. So and she's like, "Oh no, it's I'm pretty tired. I'm just gonna turn in." He's like, "Hey, no worries, but I just want to make sure you're okay." She's like, "Yeah, I'll be fine." Um, and we have basically that Cassie is treating this coping mechanism of getting revenge by taking down scaring sleazy dudes. Um, she's using it as an unhealthy coping mechanism. As she goes out to yet another club and meets this guy who, as he's taking her home or getting ready to take her home, and of course, she's acting all drunk and everything, right? They run into Ryan, and she's made like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, my schedule cleared up because everything." And she's like, "Well, let me explain." Like, "Don't worry about it. If you're not interested, it's fine." Of course, we have the other guy saying, like, "Hey, I didn't know she was taken." All this, and I want to be clear about this, right? He doesn't know her name. He's like, "Do you even know her name?" Because he's like, "Oh, she's all yours." And Ryan's like, "Do you even know her name or anything?" Like, "I think it's Claire." And Cass is like, it's pretty close. But I want to point out too, I think this is a good commentary as well on the reality that a lot of guys, and I mean a lot of guys, do not care about a woman not being interested in them. What they care about is if they're taken. There's a lot of guys where they won't respond to no, but they will respond to "I have a boyfriend," because what they really don't want to do is they either don't want to disrespect, or they don't want to get hurt by another man. And it's really disgusting, but it really comes back to this thing where a lot of men really do just view view women as property. It's the same thing where it's like, "Hey, I'm not gonna mess with like another man's, I that's like, I don't know, my friend's sister or my friend's ex or whatever." And it's like, okay, like, can you not be adults about this and just like not let that be an issue? You know what I mean? But and the reality is, if for whatever reason that a girl tells you you're not interested, just fucking accept rejection and move on. You can always find someone else. You know what I mean? Like this stuff is it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that women have to say, "Oh, I have a boyfriend," to get a guy to back off. It's like, dude, she's not interested. Just back off. That's it. But with this whole display of everything, this guy, the guy who's trying to take Cassie home, just doubles down and is like, "Wow, how embarrassing." To which Cassie's like, "Would you just fuck off?" And it's like, wait a minute. Are you sober? It's like, oh, I know who you are. You got that guy Jerry. Jerry was the first guy that we saw her, take down at the beginning of the film. And she basically just freaks him out, puts the fear of God in him, like she's trying to do to everyone here. And this time, she doesn't even have to go home with him or anything. So um, in a way, it's kind of a win. But we have this really funny moment where this guy's acting all tough and everything, and of course he does the thing. A lot of guys do this shit too, where they get rejected by a girl, and she's like, "You're not even that hot anyway." And it's like, first of all, and she even tells him, "You're not exactly dropping panties herself." And I mean, yeah, the dude's he's all right, but but it's like when that's another thing. Like, if you're a dude watching this, if you approach a girl and you get rejected, again, just accept it. There is no need to be like, well, I didn't even like you anyway. It's like, you clearly did. You tried to, hit on her, get her number, take her home, whatever it was. Don't play this fucking bullshit, But we have this really funny moment where this guy that was once, acting all like tough and everything, he's like, well, why do you guys ruin everything? And he literally like runs home whining. Is like, it's a really funny moment, and it really shows like her cracking his like kind of tough exterior and everything with this. And with this, we have Cassie continuing her mission as she goes to the next person who had a hand to play in Nina's death. Well, the event that led to Nina taking her life. As she now visits Jordan, played by Alfred Molina. Now, if you're like me and you're a huge fan of Spider-Man, you know this guy, of course, as Dr. Octopus. Dr. Otto Octavius. That's who he played him in both the Spider-Man 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, as well as the Spider-Man movie, or the Far From Home? No Way Home. It's called No Way Home. As well as, he reprised his role as Doc Ock in that as well. Basically, what it turns out is that this is a man who now, Jordan Green here is his name. And Jordan Green was Al's lawyer in a case against Nina, a legal case. And he basically confesses. First of all, he remembers Nina. He remembers her name, which is the first sign that shows Cassie, okay, this guy's a little bit different. And essentially, Jordan goes on and explains how, both with Al's case and many other cases like this, his job and many other lawyers that worked with him, their firm, their whole thing was to basically dig up dirt on women who made legal accusations against men for having sexually assaulted them, and to turn juries against them. And he was very good at his job. He had a lot of money. But he tells her he can't sleep. In fact, when he greeted her at the door, she said, "Your day of reckoning is here." And he said, "I've been waiting for this. The piper has to be paid." He knows that he's been doing these horrible things, and he knew at some point something was going to happen. He even asks her, "Are you going to hurt me?" And she asks him, "Do you want me to hurt you?" And he says, "I think I do." Because what he wants, as he's confessing, he tells her he'll never forgive himself. He can't sleep. Everything that he did, he feels so guilty, so remorseful for, that he's groveling before her feet. And as he says he'll never forgive himself for all the horrible things he did, she says she forgives him. And in this moment, we are seeing the first time we have a character actually owning up, like properly owning up to what they did without her resorting to her tactics, right? You could say that, okay, well, all these people kind of confess and apologize at some point. Not really. Especially if we look at, like, the Dean, for example. She only begged once she found out something was happening to her daughter. But this guy, from the jump, he's like, I know I messed up. I know I've done horrible, horrible things. I am so immensely sorry. And I can never even forgive myself for it. So that communicates to Cassie, Okay, you've already learned your lesson. And we have this moment where she walks out and tells this guy, job's off. You don't have to do what I've hired you to. Some kind of hitman. Now, we don't know if this guy was supposed to kill him. I doubt that, considering what we've seen of her character so far. Some way he was going to scare him, I'm sure. But, and of course he's like, still get paid, right? She's like, yeah, you're still going to get paid. But you're not, we're not doing this. We don't have to deal with this, right? And I think this is all really important because what we're seeing here is, again, Cassie isn't a monster. She's not a murderer. And again, I do think that the marketing really failed this movie in that regard. Um, she's not some horrible person. She's not doing anything like that. She just wants to basically scare people into realizing they've done horrible things and they need to change their ways. That's really what it comes down to. And with that in mind, she goes and meets with Nina's mom. And, they start talking about everything, but ultimately they come to a point where she tells Cassie, listen, it's been 7 years. We loved Nina. She was our daughter. She meant the world to us. But what you're doing holding on to this isn't healthy. You have to move on with life. Don't forget her, don't like anything like that, but you can't let this just control your life. And from here, the movie takes a very different turn. Cassie takes this advice to heart. And we have where she meets with Ryan and they decide to, talk this over, and she basically apologizes for how she's been, that she kind of needed to get her head straight and she's ready to start seeing him again. And I really like, one of the things I really like about this moment too is we're seeing that we're not seeing like, oh, the man's always having to apologize, the man's always in the wrong, nothing like that. Rather, what we're seeing here is simply she is she's in the wrong. I mean, yeah, I mean she is. She's in the wrong because she was like, kind of dishonest about not seeing him and all these different things. And from here, they decide to work things out, and we just have really a beautiful montage of, I mean, these guys just being a cute couple, just kind of doing life together, and just like everything, just you know, she's meeting her, he's meeting her family, and her family are proud of him, or excuse me, proud of her and everything, and happy for her to be with him and all that. We have these cute moments where these guys are, they're just being a couple, chilling, hanging out. One thing I like about this too is we do see a moment as well where the couple clearly are sleeping together. More than likely, they are having sex as well, but it's never like, you know, we don't have like a scene of it or anything because we don't need it. Now, I'm not one of those people. I'm actually very against the mentality a lot of people have where they're like, oh, we don't need sex scenes or nudity in movie. I very much disagree with that, especially when they say, oh, well, we have porn. We don't need that stuff. People need like to see sex outside of just porn. Like that is not where you want to see all your where you want people to have all their like exposure to like sexuality and stuff. But that's a whole other thing. But in this instance, it's really not important because it's like, yes, that's a step in their relationship, and I'm sure it was a big one for them and everything. But like, we can just have these like insinuations and seeing with these characters that like, yeah, they're furthering their relationship, and we're having this just again this really sweet montage and everything. We have where like they're all Ryan, Cassie, and wanted to call her Claire, Gail, Gail, Cassie, and Ryan are all hanging out together. So where we're having all these moments where we're just having these sweet. They're just being a cute couple, basically. And we even have this scene where Ryan's properly getting to meet her family and everything. Her parents and all that. And we have this really funny moment too, where they were like, "Oh, you're a doctor. Your parents must be proud." And he's like, "Oh no, actually, they wanted me to be a DJ." Or something. I don't remember the exact line, but something like that. And that's always funny too, because of course every parent wants their it would be proud if their kid was a doctor, and all those different things. But we just and the dad gives his approval and everything. It's like I like him. I'm happy for you. We just have these moments where these guys are just, again, they're really just enjoying their life together. They're being a sweet, beautiful couple. It's really really sweet. And this entire cute montage is played over the or has a song "Stars Are Blind" by Paris Hilton playing over it, and which every time I see this, the song just gets stuck in my head. But it's a really good song. But and we just have all of this culminates in this really cute moment as the couple are laying in bed together, and Ryan just confesses he's like, "I think I'm falling in love with you," and she's like, "I think I'm falling in love with you too." And we have this just really cute moment. And again, I cannot express enough the level of just realness that these people seem to have. The acting in this film is just absolutely incredible. Um, but speaking of that realness, like I said before, while it applies to like the really happy, cute, sweet moments like this, it also applies to the dark moments. And from these really sweet, happy, cute montage, you know how a lot of these movies go, right? After the cute, sweet montage, shit hits the fan. And it's about to. As Madison meets up with Cassie at her home, kind of like Ryan did, desperately begging, needing to know if anything happened with the guy that took her to the hotel room. Which Cassie just, explains, "I'm sorry, I should have let you know, should have called you back, but no, nothing happened, everything was fine, he just put you to bed, that's all it was." The whole point, right, was to scare the shit out of her, like what has been happening to people in general. Again, she's not a monster. She has a very dark, I would say, questionably ethical. Well, I don't really think it's ethical, but questionably ethical way of doing things. But she has her reasons. With that said, after this, Madison goes inside with Cassie and gives her a phone. This phone is from their old college days or med school days, whatever the difference is. I don't know. But whatever. This is from back when they were in school together. And she explains how, I got to thinking and I started going through my old phones, and I can't believe we watched this video and we all just laughed. We thought it was funny. But of course, it wasn't funny. So she tells her, "You can keep the phone, you can do whatever you want. I wouldn't watch the video, but it's yours to do with what you want." Also, she tells her, "Don't ever fucking contact me again." And with that, this is the moment where my friend and I, when we were watching this, were on the edge of our seats. We have this shot where she is on her knees getting ready to look at this phone. It doesn't bend over to pick it up and sit down or anything. No. The way that she's so captivated by this and to know what happened. And this is the moment that, if you don't want to be spoiled, this is where the spoiler section would be. Of course, I'll have a timestamp for when we get to the full thing of the movie in general, but this is the overall thoughts, but this is the spoiler section, if you will. Let's get to it. So, as she is watching this phone, and I remember, we paused this. Well, my friend and I, we were talking about this. We were like, "What do you think? What do you think happened?" And we were having all these different things. And I remember one of the things I said was, I was like, "I think Ryan might have been filming or something. Like Ryan is somehow involved in this." We were talking about all these other different things. Maybe it was more than just Al. Maybe she was getting passed around. All these different kind of things. And as we pressed play, and as you may have experienced when you watched this for the first time, and we have Cassie watching this, we don't see anything. You don't have to worry about everything's just implied. But we have Cassie watching as we hear the audio, and we hear everybody kind of cheering on Al. And again, we don't see it, but we hear Ryan's voice as Cassie just breaks down in tears as this man that she thought was safe and she was falling in love with and she was finally opening up to after all these years was one of the people involved who enabled this, even. And I can't imagine the pain that she must have been in. But from this point, she's back on her mission. She's no longer just moving on with life. She is back on her mission, starting, or rather continuing, with Ryan himself. So, Cassie meets Ryan at his job, at his work. And she shows him the phone, has him look at it, and immediately, first he's like, "What? I don't want to see this." Oh, why? You had so much fun when you were there watching. No, I don't want to. And she is, or he is, backpedaling on this and trying to, defend himself. It was a different time. We were kids, which they were med students, but all these different things. He's trying to give all these defenses rather than doing the one thing that might actually help him in this instance, which is reflecting on how appalling this was and apologizing. I feel like if he did that, she might actually be willing to work through this. We don't know that for a fact because he doesn't. But I'm thinking that might be the case. We do see we hear even when he was there at the party that when the camera was like being put around or whatever, and he was, "Hey, get that out of my face. Like I don't want to be like seen on this, right?" And we see that Ryan's reputation is probably the most important thing to him. More important than anything else, including the ethics of this. As we have this moment where obviously they're breaking up. Like obviously she's breaking up with him. But what he is more concerned about with anything here, he asks, "Are you gonna tell people? Are you gonna show this around?" He's like, "Are you so perfect? You've never done anything. You're not proud of. You're not ashamed of." But the thing is, he isn't owning up to this. What he's more concerned about is just how this will affect him and his reputation, rather than the fact that he was morally incredibly in the wrong. And even with everything done, she gets the information out of Ryan of where Al's bachelor party is, so that she can go, and she tells him, "Don't tell him I'm coming, because I'm just going to send the video out if I do, or if you do." And Ryan's whole thing's like, "I can't have this hanging over my head. If you send this out, we'll both," and in a last ditch effort, a last dig at her, he says, we'll both be failures, or we'll both not be doctors, you failure." And just a last dig to kind of like, which this whole thing is really kind of showing his true character. Now, granted, right, people say things they don't mean all the time when stuff like this happens, but yeah, this is not good. This is really showing Ryan's true character, and it's not great. So then we have a little montage where, excuse me, not a montage, but we have Cassie getting ready to go to the bachelor party as a stripper, set to the tone of a very dark version of Toxic by Britney Spears. Now, this is one of those things too where I feel like there is some commentary even on the fact that they used Britney Spears' music, well, a cover, but even still, of her music, considering the fact that Britney was way too young when she was marketed as a sex icon for many people. She was a sex symbol at like 16, and it's like, dude, it's fucking gross. Like, what are you doing? I think she was like in her 20s or something when she did Toxic, but even before that, like the music video where she's like dressed as a schoolgirl and stuff, like I don't know, it's pretty creepy. But so I think there's some commentary and something to be said in regards to the fact that Britney Spears' music was used for this kind of thing. Although again, a much darker, slowed down version of the song. But either way, so Cassie shows up to the party, and nobody knows who ordered her. And we have our introduction to the monster that is Al. I want to say Monroe, but I don't. I keep fucking up his name. Okay, yes, it is Monroe. Al Monroe, played by Christopher Lowell, who I know from How I Met Your Father, which is a good show. It didn't last past season 2, unfortunately, but it was a good show. But he was like the love interest in that show. But man, I love that they made him. I love that they casted him, and I love that they made it this guy because he's just a regular looking dude. But the reality is, even the most unassuming person could be a horrible monster. That's not to say that like every seemingly unassuming person is a monster or you always need to be on your guard. Just understand that like bad people don't, you know, I don't know, they don't have like like an eye patch and like something like that to communicate that they're evil or whatever. And obviously, people with eye patches aren't necessarily evil, but you get what I mean. Um, and on this note, real quick, I do want to comment too because she gets everybody super drunk with her whole thing being a stripper, and really plays with the part. And we have this moment where he even says he's like, Anastasia, that's his soon-to-be wife. Anastasia's going to kill me, and all these different things. I don't know if there was like a tongue-in-cheek thing calling her Anastasia, considering that's so close to Anastasia. Which the thing they do during surgery to like put you out so you don't realize when you're being operated on. Those kind of things. I don't know if that was like a play because they're all medical people, but they're all bros from medical school and stuff like that. But what I do want to comment on here, as we see her, giving him a lap dance and saying she needs to take him up to his room, otherwise they don't get paid. Otherwise, she doesn't get paid. It is very common for bachelor and bachelorette parties to have strippers, and a lot of times some pretty untoward things infidelity. A lot of times, infidelity, cheating, really bad behavior happens with these events, and I think that's absolutely disgusting. I never understood the concept of like, oh, I'm about to get hitched, so let me like cheat on my partner one more time before we get hit. Like, what are you doing? Like, if this is the person you're loving and you're entering into a monogamous relationship with, what the fuck are you doing? Now, if you've agreed on it beforehand with each other, or you're in a non-monogamous relationship of some sort, by all means, do what you want. But it's just a blatant disrespect, and it happens with like men with female strippers, women with male strippers. It's disgusting. No matter if it's a bachelor or bachelorette party, it's horrible. I think it's awful. But that's not really the point here. And on that note, I will say points for as little as they are, right? Points for Al here. At least he is wanting to be faithful to Anastasia. So that's something, I guess. So as they go back up to the room, she's playing up everything. He's like, "Oh, what's your name, Candy? What's your name?" She's like, "Candy." And she's getting little handcuffs for him and stuff. She's like, "Oh, this is for my safety. Guys can be hands. You want to give him a dance?" And he's like, "Look, I don't want to. I don't want to be a pussy or anything, but I do. I love my wife. I'm faithful to her, or my fiance. I'm faithful to her and everything." But of course, when he asks her name, she says her real name is Nina Fisher, and immediately Al is like, "What? That's not funny. You can't be Nina Fisher." He's like, "Why not? Because Nina Fisher's dead." Like, why would I give you a dead girl's name? And he's like, "One of the guys put you up to this. Like, this is insane." And he tries calling for their help. At which point she says, "They're not going to be able to hear you. You know, I know how to slip something in a drink. There's one thing I learned back at school." At which everything's coming together. And he's like, "Who are you?" Like all these different things. And he finds out. He's like, "Oh God, you're Nina's friend." And she's like, "Oh wow, I'm surprised you remember me." And she's just like having this like very, I don't even know what you call this like attitude, smug, I guess, very very smug, very just in power, in control, all these different things. And he's absolutely freaking out. And she's like, "I want you to tell me what you did." And he's like, "I didn't do anything. Like we were kids. We were she wanted it. She enjoyed it. All these different things." He's like, and she mentions the video and all these different things, and he's just like constantly denying as we were kids. Oh God, if I hear that one more time. Um, but he's just continually denying any responsibility, right? And he even says, this affected me too, because Nina took her life over it. But he's like, it affected me too. The video, was recorded and passed around and all that, and that's what led to Nina, killing herself. But what affected him in this way was, as he says, "Oh, it's every guy's worst fear to get accused like that." And here's the thing: yes, that is a common fear a lot of guys have, myself included. But the reality is, it's not. It's it's not really a fear you need to have if you aren't doing the kind of shit that like these guys did. Like a regular dude that is going to be or I guess I can't say regular dude, but a dude that's going to be like respectful of consent and know how to escalate properly and all these different things, you're not really going to have to worry about this. And a common fear that a lot of people instill in men in general, again myself included, is that basically any woman at the drop of a hat could do that to you. And while that is technically true that it could happen, it is very unlikely to happen unless you actually did some shit that you shouldn't have done. My point is, most guys, my point is, a lot of guys that are afraid of this don't really have anything to worry about. Unless you have actually, taken advantage of women and things like that, you're gonna, you're not gonna have to worry so much about false allegations. False allegations, they do happen, and that is a real issue, but they are way less common than many people would have you believe. Now, with that in mind, we have this incredible moment where Al is just absolutely terrified, and rightfully so. We also have a parallel, right, to at the beginning, we had Cassie splayed out kind of like this. Now we have Ryan like this. And this is the point where he is still just denying any culpability. And at this point, so as she continues with her whole thing, we really get this kind of serial killer vibe. As, she's explaining the story and how basically after everything that happened with him, after he raped her, and the video got passed around and all that, Nina wasn't herself anymore. What she says is her name, like, was never spoken without you and what you did to her being included. And everyone thought it was funny. And people thought it was funny, and it ruined her. Of course, it drove her to suicide. And so, as she says with a scalpel in her hand, it's time for Nina's name to be all over him. And so at this point, now I had watched some like interviews and things like that about this, and the people had said, the people like Emerald and people who had directed and written this movie and stuff, had said that effectively once a weapon came into play here, they knew we're gonna have to like she she can't get away with this because they're not making her a serial killer. They're not making her a villain. They're not doing anything like that. They knew they were like, this is too far. We have to end this in a way that is, you know, not satisfying for the protagonist. And what ends up happening here is we have this struggle where Al ends up breaking free, and I don't know if I can actually show this on YouTube here, but uh, he ends up suffocating her with a pillow, and from this point, the next morning, his friend Joe wakes up, and his friend Joe's like, "Well, it's a crazy party and everything, right?" And he's thinking he sees her laying there and everything. Oh, you guys must have had a wild night and all that. But then he realizes, oh my god, she's dead. Like, what happened? Why did you kill her? And then Al explains everything. And Joe is immediately like, hey, listen, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna get out of this. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna get you out of this. And what do they do? What is their method of making everything okay, making everything better? What do they do to get out of all of it? They take her body out to the woods and they burn it. From this point, I honestly thought I thought it was going to end here. This is one of those movies where so many points throughout it feels like it was going to end here. So with Cassie's body burned and as she's dead now, her parents, understandably, file a missing persons report, which leads the cops, the detectives, whatever they are, to speak with Ryan. As a man meets Ryan at his office and confronts him about not accusing him or anything, just asking him like kind of, what happened, what how did you know her? He's like, well, we were together, we were seeing each other. He's like, we're like, what happened? He's like, well, Thursday we broke up and she has been gone since Friday. So we asked her if maybe she would do anything to hurt herself or anything. He's like, yeah, maybe she would. And of course, Ryan is so concerned, so scared with everything here about everything with you know that video getting out and everyone finding out about what had happened and everything, because that's his main concern. Ryan's main concern here is not the morality, the legality, losing his girlfriend, losing anybody he cares about. It's his reputation and his job prospects. That's it. We then have the wedding of Al and Anastasia Monroe as everything seems like everyone's going to just get away with all of it. We do have a moment where I keep wanting to call him Bo or say Bo's character, but Ryan, is clearly kind of uncomfortable with some of the just in general, right? As well as some of the people that are there, especially as the guy here. I think this is Joe, actually, the same one who did the video filming and the same one who came up with the genius idea to burn Nina's body, or sorry, to burn Cassie's body, as he makes a disgusting comment about how this bridesmaid is so, he says, oh, the bridesmaid's so hot, makes you sick of your wife, which, yeah. But, he's a real class act, right? And I think this is kind of giving Ryan some kind of second thoughts as far as the people he surrounds himself with. But it's too late, as we see that Ryan actually gets a scheduled message from Cassie. And I don't think that scheduled messages are a real thing you can do. But, for the sake of the film, it does in fact happen. Meanwhile, Jordan gets a letter delivered to him telling him where Cassandra is and that if she should disappear, to deliver this package and letter to the police. They do so, and with everything happening here, we have the messages going off as we see things such as the police finding Cassandra's dead body, and we then see a locket given to, or like another half of a necklace given to Gail, which says Cassie on it. Now, I didn't touch on this too much before, but Nina and Cassie used to have, like, that little, like, each was a piece of a heart kind of thing. And when Nina died, Cassie started wearing Nina's part. So now that Cassie's gone, Gail is going to presumably wear um, Cassie's necklace. She left that with her in case she should die, which of course she has. And we have this moment where we see the police come to arrest Al, and I imagine Joe as well, for having murdered Cassie. Well, Joe runs, Joe books it, but they arrest Al. And as all of this is happening, we have the end of the message with that Cassie has sent, saying, you didn't think this was the end, right? Well, it is now. Love, Cassie, and Nina. And I really like that ending too, because, like, this is about both of them, right? Obviously, Cassie was the one that set all this up, but this is about Nina. So this is ultimately, like, this is from the both of us. You know what I mean? And yeah, we see, of course, Ryan is scared with everything happening, but we don't see anything else that's going to happen as far as, you know, um, anyone else getting away with it or anything. We don't really see the aftermath of what happened once that package is given to the police. Al was arrested for the murder of Cassie. He wasn't arrested for what happened with Nina or anything like that. He wasn't arrested for raping her or anything. But it is possible, and we can hope that once that phone gets out, once that phone is given to the police, and they release they look over the video and everything, they arrest all the people involved with that as well. And yeah, and that's the end. So that is the end of Promising Young Woman. Like I said before all this started, I really do think this is a movie that everybody should see. Incredibly well done. Just the acting, I mean, everybody does feel like real people. The subject matter, be it as dark and controversial as it is, it's definitely a conversation that needs to happen. And I feel like for a lot of men, especially that are afraid of things like, I don't know, getting Me Too'd or whatever, I think it really helps kind of show that, like, look, if you're not a piece of shit, you're probably going to be okay. You're more than likely that you're going to be all right. Yes, false allegations do unfortunately happen, but that's not what, they're very, I think it's like 30% of allegations are false, and most of them, like 70%, are true, something like that. It's very unlikely. It's not a fear that you need to have as much as women need to fear actually being, well, raped. But if there was one real critique I would give to this movie, or something that I would have personally done differently, we saw all of these negative examples of how men were. And I really do wish we would have seen just one positive example, whether if it was the beginning of the movie or the end of the movie, where we had a character, even some like extras or whatever, where we saw a guy like actually approach a girl and from start to finish, approach, flirt, escalate, bring her back home, everything being consensual, her not being shit-faced, anything like that. And we saw a positive example to contrast with all of the negative examples we had. But other than that, I think the film was just absolutely incredible. Flew very much under the radar. I'm kind of surprised that this didn't end up being a big hit, and that it didn't become like a huge talking point. It definitely deserves to be. It was just an incredible film from start to finish. Highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. You definitely owe it to yourself. But yeah, I'm really curious if any of you have seen this or want to see this yourself. Again, I do recommend seeing it before you watch this full review or anything. But definitely, interested because, as always, these are my thoughts. Really interested to know what your guys' are. Let me know in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. I have a Blue Sky now as well, a Twitter and a Blue Sky. I'm probably going to get rid of the Twitter at some point. I don't know. We'll see if everybody jumps ship to Blue Sky, like it seems like we will. But I don't really do too much with either. I try to post and stuff, but I hate character limits. They hold me so much because, as you can tell with my videos, I'm very verbose. But either way, the links are in the description, so But other than that, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave a like if you like, and if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.